Let's dive together into the heart of a wisdom that has the power to transform your perception of yourself and the world. Carl Gustav Jung's depth psychology. Forget for a moment the simplistic labels and hasty judgments. We're embarking on a journey to discover a map of the soul, a path towards greater authenticity. Do you sometimes feel like a stranger to yourself, navigating a world that seems to demand a version of you that isn't quite you? Do you have that persistent feeling that a vaster potential, a deeper truth about who you are, is waiting to be discovered? Like an inner whisper that the daily turmoil struggles to silence. If these questions resonate with you, if your being yearns for a more intimate understanding of its own workings, then you're in the right place. Carl Jung, this pioneer in the exploration of the unconscious, bequeathed us a precious compass for navigating our own inner landscape. He understood that each soul is unique, vibrating at its own frequency, but that there are universal dynamics, archetypes, and psychic functions that animate us all. To understand these dynamics is like learning the language of your own heart, deciphering the subtle messages your unconscious sends you through your dreams, your intuitions, and even your discomforts. It's recognizing that this inner radar that sometimes makes you feel a room's atmosphere with unsettling acuity, or that emotional fatigue that overwhelms you for no apparent reason, are not weaknesses, but signals. Signals from a soul seeking to align with its true nature. At the heart of Jungian thought are four fundamental ways we experience and process the world, four essential psychic functions. First, there are the thinkers, for whom the world is a logical structure to be analyzed and understood. Guided by reason, objectivity, and principles, they seek coherence and intellectual clarity. Their energy is often directed towards building systems, solving complex problems, and establishing order. Their challenge is sometimes navigating the sea of emotions, both their own and those of others. Then come the feelers, or those guided by feeling. For them, life is a matter of values, relationships, and the search for meaning. They make decisions based on what is important to them and to others, placing great importance on interpersonal harmony, empathy, and compassion. Their inner world is rich in affects, and they seek to create authentic connections. Their quest is that of the heart, sometimes at the expense of more detached objectivity. Next, we find the senses, deeply anchored in the tangible reality of the here and now. They perceive the world through their five senses, with particular attention to concrete facts, details, and immediate experience. These are the pragmatists, those who trust what is proven and observable. Abstraction and distant speculations may seem less relevant to them than the richness of the present moment. Their strength lies in their connection to reality, but they might sometimes miss broader implications or hidden potentials. Finally, there are the intuitives, whose gaze is turned towards the invisible, towards future possibilities and hidden connections. They perceive the world through a sixth sense, picking up on underlying patterns, budding potentials, and symbolic meanings. They are often visionaries, innovators, comfortable with ambiguity and change. Their radar picks up the whispers of the future, but they can sometimes neglect the practical aspects of the present or the need to concretize their visions. Each of us carries these four functions within us, but one of them tends to be our primary language, our preferred channel for interacting with life. But that's not all. Jung also observed that our fundamental psychic energy is primarily oriented in two ways, outwards or inwards. This is the distinction between extraversion and introversion. The extrovert draws their energy from the external world, from interaction with people, events, and objects. They thrive on action, discussion, and sharing. Their attention is naturally drawn to their surroundings. The introvert, conversely, finds their energy in their inner world, in reflection, contemplation, and introspection. They need moments of solitude to recharge, to process their experiences, and to deepen their thoughts. Their attention is naturally turned towards their own concepts, feelings, and inner sensations. It's crucial to understand here that introversion is not synonymous with shyness or asociality, any more than extroversion implies superficiality or an inability to reflect. An introvert can be perfectly comfortable in social settings, but will need to withdraw to recharge their batteries. An extrovert can appreciate solitude for reflection, but will find essential stimulation in engaging with the world. It's about the preferred direction of our vital energy, our psychic libido. From our earliest years, however, these natural predispositions interact with our environment. Social conditioning, parental expectations, the educational system, all of these shape and sometimes even distort our authentic expression. How many naturally intuitive and dreamy children have been pushed to be more realistic, to stop wasting their time with their heads in the clouds, to the point of doubting the validity of their own perception? How many sensitive young boys oriented towards feeling were told they had to toughen up, not to cry, thus repressing an essential part of themselves to conform to a rigid masculine ideal? How many naturally thinking, logical, and assertive young girls were labeled difficult or unfeminine, encouraging them to mask their intellectual acuity? This conditioning can lead us to overdevelop functions that are not our natural dominant ones, or to adopt an attitude, introverted or extroverted, that doesn't correspond to our primary energy flow. We then build a persona, an acceptable social mask, but one that can distance us from our true self, creating an inner saturation, a diffuse anxiety, that feeling of carrying an overflow that isn't really us. We can become hypervigilant, our inner radar constantly on alert, trying to decode what is expected of us, rather than listening to the whisper of our own soul. The magic truly happens when we combine these four functions, thinking, feeling, sensation, intuition, with the two attitudes, introversion, extroversion. This gives rise to 8 main psychological personality types, each with its own flavor, its own gifts, and its own challenges. Recognizing your dominant type is like receiving a key that opens the door to a deeper understanding of yourself. Imagine, for example, the introverted thinker. This is often the architect of ideas, the one who builds complex systems of thought in the solitude of their inner world. They might be a philosopher, a theoretical scientist, a genius programmer. Their quest is for logical clarity, internal structure. Their challenge can be to communicate their ideas in an accessible way, or to adapt to the more chaotic and less logical aspects of life and relationships. Conversely, the extroverted thinker seeks to structure the external world. They excel in organization, planning, and implementing systems and rules. We often find them in leadership or administrative roles, where they can apply their logic to achieve concrete, measurable goals. Their challenge might be to consider emotional nuances or exceptions to the rule. Next, consider the introverted feeler. This person lives by deep and intense, often discrete, values. They may have a rich inner life of emotions and moral convictions, but express them only with restraint and to a select few. They are guided by an inner compass of what is right and good, and can be deeply wounded by disharmony or injustice. The extroverted feeler, on the other hand, expresses their values and emotions more openly. They seek harmony in their relationships, investing themselves in creating connections and caring for others. We often see them in helping professions, teaching, or as social catalysts, capable of creating a warm and inclusive atmosphere. Their challenge can be to maintain their own boundaries and not become overwhelmed by the emotions of others. The introverted sensor absorbs the world through their senses in a subjective and intense way. Every detail, every nuance of a sensory experience can have profound personal meaning. They might be an artist capturing the essence of a landscape, a meticulous artisan, or simply someone who finds great richness in the silent observation of the world as it is. Their challenge is sometimes to see beyond immediate experience and connect with more abstract concepts. The extroverted sensor, meanwhile, is the pragmatic enjoyer of the real world. They love action, concrete experiences, and tangible pleasures. They are often realistic, down-to-earth individuals who adapt easily to situations and know how to make the most of them. They can excel in sports, practical business, or any field requiring immediate responsiveness to the environment. Their challenge might be to step back and consider long-term consequences or deeper meanings. Finally, the introverted intuitive explores inner worlds of vision and potentiality. They are often in touch with the collective unconscious, perceiving archetypes, symbols, and future currents. Mystics, visionary artists, or revolutionary theorists may belong to this type. Their intuitions are powerful, but can be difficult to translate into the language of the external world. Their challenge is to find ways to concretize their visions or communicate them effectively. The extroverted intuitive, on the other hand, is the hunter of opportunities and possibilities in the external world. They have a flair for emerging trends, new projects, and innovations. They are often entrepreneurs, reformers, or explorers, always on the lookout for the next big thing. Their enthusiasm is contagious, but their challenge can be to see things through to completion or to attend to the details necessary for realizing their visions. Understanding your primary way of thinking and your main energy, your dominant function, is therefore crucial for taking back the reins of your own life, to stop functioning against the current of your deep nature. It's the first step to aligning your life with your unique vibrational frequency. However, it's essential here to caution against oversimplification. These personality types are not rigid boxes we are locked into. They are tendencies, fluid preferences. Every individual has access to varying degrees to all four psychic functions. Even if one is dominant, the others also play a role. Moreover, Jung's original theory is far more nuanced than some popular adaptations, like the MBTI, which, although useful as a starting point, can sometimes offer an overly static and categorical view of personalities. For Jung, introversion and extroversion did not describe shyness or sociability, but rather the fundamental direction of psychic energy, inward or outward. In Carl Jung's psychology, personality types, the famous shadow, and the hierarchy of mental functions are not isolated concepts. They are intimately interconnected, describing the complex and dynamic dance of our psyche. Grasping this connection is the key to understanding the journey towards what Jung called individuation, the process by which one becomes a more complete, more authentic, fully realized self. Your personality type, as we've explored, is primarily defined by your dominant function, the one you use most naturally, with the greatest ease and consciousness, and your primary attitude, introversion or extroversion. But personality is much more than a simple duo. Jung described a hierarchy of 4 mental functions for each individual. There's the dominant function, the most conscious and developed, our ship's captain. Then comes the auxiliary function, which supports the dominant and provides essential balance. It's like the captain's second in command. Next, there's the tertiary function, less developed, operating less consciously, a bit like a less experienced sailor. And finally, the inferior function, the least developed, most primitive, and least conscious of the 4. It is this function that maintains the closest and most tumultuous relationship with our unconscious. And this is where the shadow comes into play. The inferior function is often repressed, neglected, or even despised, precisely because it is the opposite of our dominant function. It seems foreign, clumsy, sometimes even threatening to us. For example, if your dominant function is thinking, if you are naturally logical, analytical, and structured, your inferior function will likely be feeling, with its world of subjective values, emotions, and relationships. You might then tend to undervalue the importance of emotions, distrust decisions made from the heart, or feel uncomfortable with intense displays of affection. These aspects of ourselves that we neglect, that we judge negatively, or that we actively repress, largely because they are associated with our inferior function, or because they are socially less acceptable for the role we think we should play, contribute to forming what Jung calls the shadow. The shadow is therefore that part of our unconscious that contains the personality traits, instincts, desires, and experiences that our conscious ego rejects, ignores, or fears. It is not necessarily bad by nature, but it is dark because it is unrecognized, unlit by consciousness. It is the territory of our untapped potential, our hidden weaknesses, but also our buried gifts. The interaction between our conscious personality and our shadow is a constant and often unconscious dance. Our conscious personality type, shaped by our dominant and auxiliary functions, has an unfortunate tendency to project the qualities of the shadow, and thus often those of our inferior function, onto others. What we don't recognize in ourselves, what we've repressed into our own psychic cellar, we see writ large, secretly admire, sometimes envy, or more often, vehemently criticize in others. The external world then becomes a mirror of our own unconscious. If you find yourself systematically irritated by a certain type of person or behavior, ask yourself if it isn't touching a raw nerve, a part of you that you haven't yet dared to look at. Ignoring one's inferior function and shadow inevitably leads to an unbalanced, rigid, and often suffering personality. Let's take the example of a thinking dominant person who represses their inferior feeling function. They may appear cold, excessively critical, disconnected from their own emotions, and unable to understand or validate those of others. Paradoxically, they might be secretly impressed, even envious, of someone who manages to express their emotions freely, thereby revealing their own deep need to develop that part within themselves. Or conversely, they might be very critical of that same person, judging their emotional expression as irrational or weak, thus manifesting their active rejection of this dimension of human experience that they haven't integrated. Under stress, intense fatigue, or in crisis situations, the inferior function and the contents of the shadow can erupt uncontrollably, often in a negative and destructive form, because they have never been welcomed, understood, and consciously integrated. This is the famous straw that breaks the camel's back, the moment when one snaps or loses it, acting in a way that surprises even ourselves. The process of individuation, this path towards the totality of self, therefore necessarily involves becoming aware of these repressed parts, bravely confronting one's inferior function and other aspects of one's shadow. It's not about letting the inferior function take over and govern us, as it will always remain less differentiated than the dominant one. Rather, it's about recognizing it, accepting it with humility, and gradually integrating it into consciousness. It's a bit like learning to use your non-dominant hand. At first, it's clumsy, frustrating, but with practice, you gain dexterity and versatility. By integrating the shadow, we reclaim the considerable psychic energy that was previously mobilized to keep it repressed. We become more aware of our real motivations, less susceptible to projections and hasty judgments. The relationship between the different mental functions becomes more harmonious, more collaborative. The goal is not perfection, but completeness. It is here that Stoic wisdom can enlighten us. Think of Marcus Aurelius, inviting us to build our inner citadel. This citadel is not built by denying our shadow parts, but by understanding and integrating them, to achieve a form of inner sovereignty, a peaceful detachment in the face of external and internal storms. It is about focusing on what we can control, our response, our understanding, our willingness to integrate. Thus, your personality type, defined by your dominant function and your attitude, directly influences which parts of you, notably your inferior function, are likely to be relegated to the shadow. The analysis of the shadow, this courageous exploration of our secret garden, and the understanding of the hierarchical structure of your mental functions are crucial for balanced and authentic psychological development. By consciously recognizing and integrating these less developed and often unconscious aspects, you embark on the royal road to individuation. You allow your soul to radiate more fully, to emit its unique frequency with greater clarity and power. You discover that your true strength lies not in conforming to an external mold, but in deep alignment with the totality of who you are. Signs and synchronicities then become more numerous, as if the universe itself were responding to your new resonance. Your inner guidance becomes more audible, a clear whisper in the silence of your finally pacified being. This journey of self-discovery, in the light of Jung's teachings, is a profound and continuous adventure. What we've explored together is just a starting point, an invitation to continue your own quest. Jungian concepts are tools, maps for navigating your own inner universe. Don't hesitate to read Jung himself, or commentators who have made his thought accessible, to deepen your understanding. But above all, observe yourself with curiosity and compassion. Keep a dream journal. Note the situations that trigger you emotionally. Explore what fascinates or repels you in others. Every experience is an opportunity to know yourself better. If this journey to the heart of yourself calls to you, if you are ready to lift the veil on the hidden treasures of your personality and integrate your shadow for a richer and more authentic life, comment below, "I decide to accept and love myself in my entirety." Subscribe so you don't miss our next explorations of the mysteries of the soul and psyche. Share this revelation with those who, like you, are in search of meaning and inner truth. Remember, the greatest adventure is self-discovery. Every step towards understanding your inner world is a step towards greater freedom, greater peace, and a more radiant expression of who you truly are. Dare to be fully yourself, with your lights and your shadows, because it is in this totality that your true power and unique beauty reside. May this breath of truth resonate within you long after these words.